Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third webinar of this year's Sustainability Day of Action. I'm going to give it a couple minutes while everyone gets in. If you have been at our two previous webinars, a massive thank you and well done for getting through the day with us. This is our third of the day. As we have mentioned, it was going to be our fourth, but we've postponed our Clean Air Day because this was supposed to be on Clean Air Day back in June, but we had to postpone the whole day of action down to the election that was called. But we've all got here in the end, so appreciate everyone turning up today and signing up to this one. We have been running the Sustainability Day of Action for this is our third year now, but it was something that was going for about 7 years before we took it over, and it is a flagship event. Thank you to everyone who has been tagging us on Twitter. Thank you for everyone, all the amazing hospital trusts who are doing really interesting and fun things this year. I would go over to Twitter and take a look at hashtag Sustainability Day of Action and see what people have been up to in different trusts across the country. There's some great pictures and some really good stories there as well. We have run our webinar earlier on first thing this morning. Our first one was on NHS supply chain, and then at lunchtime we made everyone ready for their lunch and got them nice and hungry during the nutrition webinar. Which was really good. If you did miss those, don't worry too much about it because they have been recorded and they will be set up on our blog as a write-up and a video that you can re-watch back. The same will be for this one. This is our final webinar of the day, and it's something that's become it's become a lot more important, we've felt, over the years since running sustainability partnerships, because we've had some really pertinent, important and inspiring speakers and topics across all of our webinars. But I think that what we've found is, unless we take everyone on the journey when it comes to sustainability, there's not much point in just having those heroes and those cheerleaders trying to action everything for everyone. And unless we make things completely accessible and inclusive and engaging through communications, then we're not going to make nearly the impact that we're looking to. So that's why we decided to finish the day with this webinar all about communications, taking everyone along on that journey with us and making sure that's inclusive as possible. So we're going to start off with Jess. Jess is the head of communications at Halston B2B, which is our sister marketing agency, who work a lot with health, healthcare, health tech, and a lot of other businesses as well, including heavy industry. And she's going to talk about your sustainability narrative from a Halston B2B perspective. We then have Gary from Joy Junction. Sam's going to be after him from Made by Studio, and then we have Kate finishing us off, who has just run the amazing Yorkshire Sustainability Festival here in Leeds in the last couple of weeks, and she's going to talk about sustainable events. So Jess, if you can please take over. What we'll do is, if you've got any comments, if you want to say hello, if you want to send any links, if you want to get involved or just add your thoughts, please use the comments section of Zoom. If you have any questions specifically for our speakers, they're then going to be answering them after all four of them have presented. So please use the Q&A function for the questions and the chat function just for your general sort of chit chat. Happy to have everyone get involved there. So Jess, I'm going to hand over to you. Please give us a bit of an intro to yourself and what you're going to be talking about today.
Yep, took me a second there. So today I'm talking about NHS sustainable communication. So I'm Jess, head of digital comms at Halston B2B, but we obviously also do the marketing for sustainability partnerships, and that's where most of the topics today is going to be focused on communications, actually from a trust perspective. So to start off, obviously every trust has its own sustainability story. So obviously the Greener NHS has delivered this sort of overarching net zero national health service plan, but each trust within that will take a different approach of how they deliver it. Not everyone will need to do the same thing. They'll have their own objectives. So in that way, you kind of need to kind of build your own story, and one that will be delivered externally but also to your team members as well. And we're going to go through just a few ways in which you can do that and why you should be kind of incorporating comms into your sustainability plans.
Jess, you're sharing your notes page, not the presentation page, FYI.
Oh, of course I am. And that's probably better that you told me now because it becomes gibberish in about a few seconds.
That's fine, and you won't be the last. Don't worry about it.
I think if it's 2 seconds, it's not turning it off now. So if I do, does this still do it 2 seconds? Is that still doing the same one?
Yeah, it's a notes page. I wonder how, because it was perfect when you shared it in our practice
I
session.
know, it literally would be. And then if I'm just going to share this, my desktop because terrible. Absolutely.
That's perfect. Take heed, everyone else, when you're ready to share. This might happen to you. Right, carry on, Jess. Thank you.
That's so typical. And so obviously your story could encompass sort of a number of topics. So when we say story, this is just your comms in lots of different formats. So you could be promoting sort of the installation of new technology or renewables onto your site, the launch of participation in new initiatives. So we've got things like that we've seen and we've been tagged in, like net zero surgeries, waste programs, even green habitats being built on NHS trust grounds. We've seen some really nice employee stories, so bringing a bit more of a personal approach rather than just being just from the trust, to actually having it from the employees as well. And it could be sort of promoting your achievements, such as meeting your sustainability objectives or the progress that you're making. But it's also could be a way to deliver climate education and improve carbon literacy, just to make sure everyone has that broad understanding. Some examples here. So these are literally just a few quick ones that we've just pulled out. So here's like Northumbria has their own sort of action plan that's tailored specific to them. And also some really just great stories around plastic-free surgeries and stuff like that. And they're the sort of things that you want to incorporate and build out. Why do you want to do this? So the reasoning behind crafting sustainable comms is twofold. So it's either demonstrating commitment externally, so showing that you are actually committed to that overarching plan, but also building that internal commitment for people to want to actually support, want to get involved, want to actually drive change internally as well. In terms of external communication, so obviously this is any sort of platform that you have available as part of your trust. So it could be press releases, it could be social media, it could be blogs, website pages, emails. Is any way that you can show basically the amazing work your trust is doing. And it kind of, you show your commitment in line with the NHS's overarching plan, but also provides that insight that can help other trusts, suppliers, and even the public. So for example, other trusts, everyone's pretty new on this sort of journey. It's not necessarily something everyone has done before. And just those trusts that are really spearheading change or doing something quite different or really taking action can help to inspire other trusts to kind of follow suit, but also give them a really good basis of knowledge to be like, actually, this is something we could implement. So showing a story, if you've kind of managed to reduce plastic completely for this surgery, how you did it, what was the approach, did you collaborate with other people to make it happen? And even if there was challenges along the way as well, that's super helpful to pass that knowledge on, because I think the siloed effect within the NHS makes it quite difficult to make change on a scalable level, and really being open and kind of really sharing what you've done in your communications can actually support other trusts to come along as well. There's also the supplier perspective, because obviously, if we've got the diagram here, a huge proportion of the NHS emissions are being driven through the scope 3. And obviously, this is the one that you have the least control over. But the way that you influence that is influencing change in the suppliers. That's mainly done through obviously the procurement perspective. So obviously there's been the introduction of the PPN 0621. But basically you're looking for suppliers that obviously align a lot more with the goals that you're looking to achieve. But they may be the goals for the overarching NHS, but there might not be the specific ones for your trust. And being open in sort of your communications into maybe a website page of like your 4 core ambitions, maybe actually food and catering, it might be reducing packaging. In this area, it might be actually the staff commuting aspects, the ones that are your biggest priority. You can make that quite clear and open, and that's kind of helpful in terms of procurement's perspective, because actually suppliers are a lot more able to adjust to what you want basically, and it's a lot more specific to what you need rather than just kind of being broad. It allows you to align a lot more specifically. And then so this is just some stuff that we've done in the past. So social media, you can be a bit more fun about it as well. It doesn't all need to be like super boring, which everyone likes to think it is. This is BIB. They're a division of Bradford NHS Trust. So we did some cute, like fun little bits with them, but that was actually engaging from an external perspective with their patients and stuff like that, showing that they are committed and they make a lot of improvements. They're doing research around actually the impact of, they did a research around the impact of air pollution and stuff like that actually on children and young people's lungs and stuff like that. And actually they wanted to show that they are committed to the change as well. It wasn't just they were researching about it. There's things that we've done with suppliers as well within the NHS that are doing really good things, such as Collybox. They're helping to reduce packaging and food catering waste. And it's just sharing those stories and again and again. There's also the flip side of it. So obviously you've got your external piece, but it's also internal, which is super important. And it probably may be a bigger proportion because the NHS is our biggest employer. So there's a lot of people to communicate to. So the road to net zero is obviously not going to be achieved by one person. It's not even going to be achieved by one team. So we have a sustainability team. It's not even going to be achieved by them. It's got to take everyone. And employee engagement is so crucial. And I know this is going to be discussed later on as well. But it's promoting sustainable practices internally. And that can be quite intertwined with your internal comms, which helps drive awareness of the initiatives that you're promoting, what you're doing. It obviously can help to boost that engagement, but hopefully inspire a bit of change as well, because people can't make change if they didn't even know this initiative was happening, and it's really important to kind of bring people along. So we've done things like in the past, there's lots of different ways that you could do it, but it could be posters. I know screens work quite well. Emails are really good. Social media and newsletters as well, but it'll kind of have to be adapt and change to your trust and what you actually find works the best. And sometimes you have to just try out a few different methods until you get the one that works best for your trust. Obviously, the NHS is huge, and it has a huge amount of information, and it has a huge amount of documents, and the documents are very, very large. So the likelihood that someone is going to sit and read through all of those is very minimal. So you need to kind of tailor and hone down to what's really important to your trust and communicate that in more bite-sized formats to kind of build the knowledge and build the engagement rather than just going with the overarching documents. And kind of tailor it down. So there's things that you can do. So these are just examples of like screens. We have like intranets where it has internal stories of when things have been happening. Just building that awareness is a really big step. Some animations as well, they work quite well when people don't always want to sit and read documents, and there's a lot of that. So it's kind of adapting and changing the formats that would work best to actually build that engagement. And there's things that you can do. So for the trust that obviously have a dedicated green plan that's just specific to their trust, or the ones that have already built out trust specific sustainability objectives, you can few things you can do to basically elevate your sustainability comms. Making sure it's accessible is number one. So like if it's on a website, if it's in an internal platform, if it's hosted on social media, whichever format you choose, just make sure it's super easy to get to for those that are interested. Like I mentioned earlier, constantly try new ways to communicate. So if you find actually emails just get completely lost, people are bombarded with emails, it just doesn't work for them. Try out different formats until you get the one that works actually best for your trust. adapt the format. So obviously quite a lot of documents relating to sustainability are sometimes quite dry, they're sometimes quite big. So try adapting the format in terms of maybe converting it to a digital magazine. There's loads of tools that'll do that for free for you now as well. Helps to kind of build the engagement, and you can actually track how far people are reading the documents as well, so to see if people drop off, which is really good to learn. But break it down into smaller pieces, like the animation bit. If it's just one core objective that you're looking to promote for the next 3 months, just focus on that. Just tailor lots of bite-sized formats around that one objective rather than overloading with everything. We found social media out of all the platforms, X works the best. Just for NHS, it's the one we use the most, just because we find the most amount of members are on there. But again, test and try and see what works best. Tailor it to your audience. So not everybody needs to know about all of the stuff, particularly if some of the objectives are very department based. So if there's ways that you can segment your audience in any way, particularly emails, probably the easiest format where you can segment the audience. If you can tailor that and just actually send the objectives or the comms that are relevant to those people, they're less likely to switch off if they're being emailed about all sorts of stuff that are not relevant to them. The likelihood is that the email audience becomes less engaged. So think of ways that you can actually segment your audiences and make it just a bit more specific to them if it's possible. And think of ways to make it fun. So we add things like quizzes, games, competitions, all sorts of stuff. It sounds really silly, but honestly, you much rather get a quiz about this new. It could be a quiz around emissions or who knows what. And if there's competitions and fun stuff, we actually did build a bug hotel for one client, and that was actually the favorite one that they actually did. And it seems really funny, but it was all around creating habitats, and actually it's wider than just emissions, because I think we get a bit narrow-minded that it's just emissions and that's the only thing. Sometimes actually there's loads of different elements. So that did really well. So just trying to think of ways to make it interactive, make it fun. And there's loads of tools these days, particularly that can convert them into engaging online formats that you can send out, and it's not too time intensive to make it into those fun elements as well. Things to consider. So these are just a little points of just upcoming things more than anything else. So obviously sustainable comms is extremely powerful, but it also can be a thing that becomes a bit misleading if used in the wrong way. Obviously the NHS is very strict on what it says, and usually the trust will follow the guidance, but I just thought I'd let you know about these anyway. But your messages should obviously always be evidence-based. It should always be backed up with some form of data, whatever you do claim or say. I'd say be quite selective with the terminology, because terms such as climate neutral and climate positive have just been sort of banned by the EU, and that will be coming into effect by 2026. This was mainly due to consumer-facing brands, mainly fashion brands, that were saying things that were clearly not true, or they couldn't substantiate their carbon offsetting. So anything relating to carbon offsetting will now be banned. And even though it's an EU legislation, we do tend to follow suit in the UK. So just something to bear in mind. And I'd keep an eye on stuff like this all the time, because it's constantly changing. They're trying to get organizations and ASA as well. They have guidance on net zero. So the ASA, the advertising agency, they oversee basically all that you can say in terms of advertising, but it is best practice to sort of follow what they're saying, even though you might not be in that particular field. And it's just basically don't say net zero unless it's an unqualified claim. So just having the data to back up what you're saying. But I do think more of these sort of legislations and kind of restrictions will start to come into place, because I think there's been a lot of time where people have just been using terminology for not the right reasons. For businesses, because I do know some businesses are on here as well that may be looking to supply into the NHS. Obviously, the same applies to you. The NHS now more than ever is looking to procure from those that align with their net zero plan. Obviously, the carbon reduction plan has been introduced in line with the PPNO 621 regulation. So obviously, you're going to have to be gaining that data around carbon tracking, but why not make it impactful? Why not make it part of your story? And why not use comms to showcase your sustainability progress? It's all well and good having carbon reduction plan, but if there's no evidence or proof that you're kind of working through that and actually making a change, then it's not as kind of powerful, basically. And it gives you a way to deliver a bit of transparency to the NHS procurement team that you are doing what you say you're going to do. So I'd think all the sort of actions, I'd take that on the flip side as well. And it's definitely something that businesses can apply when looking to work with the NHS. But yeah, that was me. Thank you very much.
Very abrupt finish, but thank you for that, Jeff. I appreciate. Sorry, I know we had some technical difficulties there as well. If you want to stop sharing your screen, what one of my team is going to do right now is actually share with you what we're calling our sustainable suppliers index. Now, this is brand new. It's something that came out last week. This allows for anyone who does have a sustainable product to set up a profile. What we'd also like you to do, if you are from the NHS, and I really appreciate all you guys from communications coming and saying hello and chatting. The funny thing is, when you're in communications, and I get to say this because I've got a marketing agency, you do tend to be the chattiest type. So appreciate everyone coming in and saying hello and leaving their comments. So more of that. Please introduce who you are, where you're coming from today, what you'd like to hear a little bit more about. What I'd also like, if you are from the NHS side, is to please and we'll send you over, we'll put in a link into the webinar now, is for you guys to give us a little bit of feedback on our sustainability index, because it's there for you guys in the NHS to procure more sustainably by using alternative people. So if you guys can please stick some responses into that questionnaire, if you're from the NHS, would really, really appreciate it. So we're going to post that in now. So yeah, great. So it's free for the NHS to use. Anyone can just come onto it, view the profiles of every business that has signed up for a profile. But there's quite a few on there already who we've worked with from sustainability partnerships. So please go and have a look on there, and please make sure it's free. It's fit for purpose for the NHS. Gary, we're going to jump into you because we are already 22 minutes in, and I know that we've got we're not going to have a lot of time for Q&A. So Gary, do you want to give us an intro to who you are and what you'll be presenting today?
Yeah, of course you can. Let me just share my screen so it's done. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So thank you for inviting me today. So in the next 10 minutes, we're going to condense what I'm doing to an hour into a short period of time. So we're going to rattle through this, but you will get my slides afterwards and there'll be a bit more detail there. So just to introduce myself. So my name is Gary Butterfield. I'm a consultant and founder of a small business based in Leeds called Joy Junction. Now, my background is naturally in sustainability, it's in well-being. So I work with large organizations typically, but I do some small businesses also on their well-being proposition. Everything from developing strategy all the way through to delivery to members of staff on, in the business. And a few years ago, a reason why I'm here today, a few years ago, I developed a tool called the Conversation Canvas. And the Canvas was specifically designed to enable well-being conversations within the workplace, between line managers and their colleagues. It's used all around the world. I'm going to show you that in a sec. But more recently, a number of organizations have asked me whether this lends itself to sustainability and to learning development, equality, diversity, and other broader subjects outside of well-being. And the models that it uses, which I'm gonna take you through, they do lend themselves really, really well. So the Conversation Canvas is a free-to-use tool, and you can download it from my website, and I'll share you a link later. But to show you that, this is what it looks like. Now, this is the well-being version. So the idea of it is to bring your well-being conversation into one place, onto one page, and it's using 3 core models. The first one is me, we, and us. So in a well-being sense, what does well-being mean to me? What does well-being mean to we as a team? And what does well-being mean to us as an organization? When we're looking at introducing a well-being proposition, if we can answer all 3 of those questions, we're in a much stronger position, because we know what success looks like for all 3 of those key stakeholders. It also uses the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework, which is incredibly well used within the NHS and outside in the broader public sector and private sector also. And the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework was developed by the New Economics Foundation in 2008. It's been researched time and time again since. And as you would expect, it's 5 ways to be active, connect, take notice, keep learning, and give. And then the third model being used here is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in a nutshell, Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts at the bottom of the pyramid with basic needs. So that's water, shelter, food, and so on. And as you start to go up that pyramid, it becomes more about community and knowledge of oneself and fulfillment. So that's a real sort of whistle-stop tour of that. And let's go into the sustainability part. So the conversation canvas for sustainability looks something like so. It's split into 3 key sections, which we're going to delve into now. So the first one is the band at the top. And this is general housekeeping. So who's there, what date it is, and the date of our next conversation. Now, when I was looking at well-being discussions, I boiled it down to 3 core outcomes. So what's gone well for your well-being between now and the last time we had a discussion, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, however long that is. Where do you want to get to between now and the next time we have a well-being conversation? And then how are we going to get there? So they're the 3 core questions we're looking to answer here. And that how are we going to get there and where do we want to go will determine that next conversation day. So we tend to leave that alone until the end. So the lion's share of your discussion using the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework is this on the bottom left. So although the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework is a well-being framework, it does lend itself really, really nicely to sustainability. So in order to be more sustainable and bring people along that journey with us to engage employees in sustainability, we need to give them the opportunity to learn. We need to give them the opportunity to take that learning and give it to their team, share that practice with one another. We need to look at where we can be physically active, through sustainable commuting as an example. We need to explore how we can better enable that, and how we connect to the organizations with goals, and how we to connect to one another in a more sustainable manner. And then take notice how do we measure our personal impact on sustainability and on the broader environment, and how can we as a team manage our resources better, and so on and so forth. So the lion's share of your discussion here, using the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework as a sustainability framework, works really well. You can also see that me, we, and us is here too. So if we take connect as an example in the top right-hand corner, so how could you connect with others to boost sustainability? What activities could we do as a team to strengthen our connection with the environment? And how could our organization support employees to connect with sustainability efforts? Very much builds into what Jess was saying before about our comms. It works really, really well there. So the me, we, and us model is quite prominent there. Now, when I was looking at well-being conversations and the broader appraisal process also, which is the original inspiration for my conversation canvas, when I was looking at that, I was quite disappointed that these discussions tend to be one way, one directional. So, what's your well-being goal? I want to go for a walk on my lunch break. It's usually, that's great, crack on, we'll come back together in 6 months and see how we're getting on. But we all know that if you're working on an NHS, a very busy NHS ward, it's not as easy as just putting your trainers on and going for a walk on a lunch break. There's a number of things in the background that prevent you from doing so. And the current process doesn't enable you to set those expectations or discuss those expectations in the first place. So when it came to where you want to go between now and the next time of a discussion and how are we going to get that, it's really important to me that we worked in some kind of requirement for all three of those key stakeholders. So this is a sustainability discussion. So let's pick three ideas. Let's choose three ideas that we can work on to be more sustainable based on the conversation that we've had. And then let's pick one of those to experiment with, and let's look at how we can achieve that. So what can I do as an individual to achieve this goal? Let's say I want to active commute. It's in my gift to get on my bike and cycle to work. My line manager can't force me to do so. That's down on me. I can wear my high vis if it's raining or if it's dark. That's on me to achieve that goal. What can your colleagues and your line manager do to support you? It could be giving time before your shift starts to go get a shower. It could be something really, really simple like that, or support to do that. How can we can set that expectation there and then? And what can the organisation do to support me to achieve that goal? It could be a cycle to work scheme. Maybe you don't have one. I want to be able to get a bike for £1,000 with all the gear and do it through salary sacrifice. That's an organizational initiative that would be really helpful for me for my sustainable goal. So it's really important to me there that we set those expectations, those requirements for all three of those key stakeholders. So that there is a very, very, very brief whistle-stop tour. I say I do this over an hour or 2 hours usually, but that's a really, really brief whistle-stop tour of that. You can download this. I'm not going to leave my slides up because we are pushing time, but I'll put this link in the chat so you can go and download that. You can get it immediately. You can also get my slides from today, which have a bit more information there. And I will stop talking and let you move on. There we are.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. We do have to move on, but thanks so much for all that. I'm sure that there's so much more that you'll be able to help people out with. So please do feel free to stick those links into the chat. Thank you everyone again for saying who you are and what you've been up to. Excited to send this recording out to everyone who couldn't make it as well. We're going to move on to you, Sam, if you want to give us an intro to yourself and what you do at Made By. Gary, you'll need to stop sharing for Sam to be able to share. Yeah, perfect.
Right, let's give it a go. Let's see if we can get it working. Gary, you're going to be very happy with me because look what I have on my desk.
No, that wasn't even a plan. That's crazy.
No, it was from a previous conference. Is that coming through okay on my slides?
Yeah. No, we can just see your Outlook calendar.
What? Let's try that again.
Jeff, you're not the only one.
Makes me feel a lot better.
Must be the end of the day.
Yeah. Done it 1,000 times before, but when you really need to, just don't have them.
What on earth? Is that working? Is it coming through?
Nothing's sharing. That's it.
Is that still working? Is that all good?
Perfect.
Yeah, got there. Thank you. That's a really good way to say that I work in digital when I can't actually share a screen. So fantastic. But yeah, thank you very much for having me today. I'm Sam Taylor, the co-founder and creative director at Made By Studio. We're a digital design studio based in Leeds, and we have a big focus towards sustainability, which I'll get right into. So in terms of who we are an agency that care about technical excellence, and we build digital solutions with sustainability and accessibility ingrained at every single step of the process. We work with a wide range of clients from private sector and public sector, from biggest construction company in the world down to local mental health charities, specialising a lot in medtech, green tech industries. That's a very quick intro to us. And now most of this talk today is going to be facts and figures and things to just think about. I want it to be a bit of an education piece that maybe gets your mind turning, later on, or when you're applying yourself to work in some way. So a fact that we've got here is the aviation industry accounts for 2.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. We think about the aviation industry a lot when it comes to greenhouse gases and how bad flights are for the environment. But if we contrast this against internet use, so internet use is 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a massive problem there that I don't believe people are talking about enough at the moment. And this is another fact which hopefully will stick in your minds. So the global average consumption for web surfing, social media, and streaming, it accounts for approximately 40% of the per capita carbon budget. So when we talk about global warming and not letting it rise more than 1.5 degrees, we're already using 40% of that just on digital and the way that we're consuming digital products at the minute. So obviously something's got to massively change if we're going to carry on living the way we are and using technology and IT equipment. And this is where it's a bit of an education piece, because I think one of the ways that we need to do that is by challenging one another, holding each other accountable. So I think in the audience today, I've just had a quick look at the comments. We've got a mixture of people within the NHS, NHS trusts, and we've also got private companies and suppliers. And I think we've all got to take the onus to start challenging each other, recommending different things to each other, and moving us all on as a group, really. So when I talk about digital emissions, if you're not already aware, this is how they work. So we have the user, and that could be your client, it could be yourself on a device such as a website, on their laptop, it could be streaming content. The end user devices, so we have smartphones, laptops. Each of those has its own carbon embodied within it, the materials that it's made out of, but it is also using energy, it's using data. Every time we have to request data from a server, it goes through a network. That network needs supplying by energy from the grid, and then it gets down to a data center. Most of us know that data centers absolutely sap energy from the grid. They're really resource intensive. And again, at the end of that, we've also got the whole distribution, the raw materials for those data centers. So the reason that the carbon emissions are so large for internet usage and for streaming is because every single moment that we're absorbing data or downloading an email or an attachment, this process is taking place somewhere. So how can we start thinking about reducing the way that we use digital and mitigating against that? We want to be more sustainable in our digital use. The ways we can do that, so I'll come at it from a web designer's point of view first, because that's my trade and that's what I love. But I think even if you're not in this space at the minute, you can be questioning the people you're working with. So if you are looking at getting a new bit of comms work done, so this is where it comes in really great with what Jess said. All the comms pieces are fantastic and we need to get those across. But how do we do it in the most efficient, green way as well? Let's actually think about the tooling for a second. So number one is plan the journey. A lot of the time we just put as much content as we can on a page and don't really consider the main points of it. Is the content going to be clear, or are people going to be scrambling around and trying to work out how to use it? Is there going to be a clear call to action? Do people know exactly where to go in that piece of content? If there's multiple call to actions and they've accidentally clicked on the wrong one, they've accidentally loaded a web page for no reason, and at the end of the day, that's emissions. And again, the amount of clicks to the goal, how can we reduce the user journey in some way? Again, less clicks, the better, not just for sustainability, but also the user's journey anyway. Next is keeping it lightweight. So when we build web pages, do we need to have loads and loads of video, loads of pictures? Some of the worst things that you can actually do in terms of digital emissions is pictures and video. That's because there's a lot of data that's required to show them. So can we simplify that through icons, through using less fonts, less colors, things like this all come into account when we're talking about digital emissions. Reducing and optimizing and removing the heavy assets. So like I said before, is do your heavy assets actually provide value? We spoke earlier about having animation. It's fantastic to get people to engage with a bit of content rather than reams and reams of paper. But animation, depending how you do it, can actually be quite sustainable compared to a massive PDF document that people are downloading hundreds of times. If you send an email out with a PDF document, every single time someone receives that, they've got to download it in a separate place. Whereas if you have one animated video on a website somewhere, then it would only be calling from that server, and again, reduce emissions. And in terms of green development, so if we step away from the design side into the actual hosting side, which is a huge part, green web hosting is number one. So depending if you're a supplier in the NHS or within the NHS, you'll have different says within this. But green web hosting is your server run on renewable energy. Some people say once we've got every data center on renewable energy, then the problem stops there. But technically it doesn't, because our grid is struggling for capacity as it is. And when everyone puts their kettle on at 5:30 when they get home, it's still going to be sapping energy from the grid. So we need to find a way to reduce the amount of data on websites too. Repeat and reuse. You'll start seeing a lot of similarities with these in terms of if you think about plastic use. So when we talk about plastic, the first question we ask is, well, do we need it? Can we get rid of the plastic packaging here? Do we really need that? And then if yes, well, how can we set up a recycling scheme for plastic? We need to start doing this with a lot of the other things that we're using in our day-to-day life. We don't have an exhaust pipe coming out our phone, so we never think it with our digital assets. But one of the best things that we can actually do is reusing the same code, reusing the same content. If we're doing email send outs, can we build template emails and have similar looking emails every time? And even if that's writing out just a plain text email, not really like a marketing email, you can set up templates for those and send them out, because every moment you're sat typing on your laptop, writing up emails, you are using energy. And it sounds a bit doom and gloom, because as soon as you realize this, every single thing you do, you think is just emissions. But if we start creating these little workflows to help us repeat and reuse the work that we're doing, it makes it much better. And this is one thing that we do through our website building as well. Reducing page weight. So online, all websites have a page weight. So that is the amount of code it uses, the amount of plugins, things like YouTube videos. So YouTube puts a lot of code into your website, and Google, not very surprisingly, loves to sap as much data as it can out of your website about the users that are on there, how long they're watching videos, which from a marketing point of view is fantastic, because you get a lot of data from this. But from a sustainability point of view, it is a big issue. And it's just about trying to find that balance. I'm not for one moment saying get rid of every single script on your website. I'm just saying maybe have these considerations in place and ask people, do we need every single bit of that tracking information or not? And again, this comes back to modern image and video formats, removing unnecessary code. So depending how your website's built, you might have page builders on there with stuff that you're just not using, but that is data sat on the internet. And coming on to that, do we really need it? 90.6% of internet content gets no traffic from Google at all. So do we need what's on there? Is it going to be relevant, or can we just get rid of it completely? So there are a few things to be thinking about in terms of websites. I'm touching on marketing very quickly as well, just in terms of a couple of resources that people are starting to now create. So skip one there. When we think about emails, emails have a large carbon footprint. So a good web page, if we can get an A-ranked web page on a carbon calculator, has about 0.15 grams of carbon each time. But a standard email has 4 grams. And then if we have an email with a long tiresome attachment, is what the Carbon Literacy Project say. Again, if we go back to that long PDF that we're sending out to hundreds of people, then that's 50 grams of CO2 emissions, which is a hell of a lot if you add it up through time. But a couple of ways that we can start thinking about this. So there's software out there now, and again, you can question your marketing teams, your providers about this. And EcoSend, so it's a MailChimp alternative, but it's a carbon negative email marketing platform. And then if you're in the events business, then you might look at something like this, where a lot of people, oh, I've got MailChimp there, sorry, it's supposed to say Eventbrite. So if you're using Eventbrite for your events, then something like Ticket which is a B Corp, might be a more suitable solution. So one point on this is everyone thinks sustainability costs more and you don't get the results from it, whereas it's not the case at all in digital. It's quite the opposite. So a company that we work with called Diamedica, through website carbon calculators, we reduced the amount of carbon that was released on every page load, and Google Lighthouse audits now ranks it better because it's more sustainable. Because being more sustainable just directly translates to being optimized and being served in a better function. So it's getting higher scores on across Google's Lighthouse audits. And that also means it gets better results from customers. So this was a 50.8% increase in website inquiries just 3 months after launching it with a sustainable website. So when we think about green costing more and being problematic and having to change workflows in a way that's going to disrupt the business, reset that mind shift. It can be a much more positive approach, especially in terms of profit side as well, if you're on that private sector side. One thing we're doing now, so we're on the cusp of releasing what we think is the most in-depth website sustainability audit tool. And if anyone fancies putting their website through a sustainability audit, and we can start looking at comparisons with how many kettles are boiled. So we did one that was a sustainability consultant, and their website, when put through this calculator, turns out with 10,000 monthly page views, their website is equivalent to 70,000 kettles being boiled for cups of teas. And this is the impact that we just don't really see on websites at the minute. So if anyone fancies a free website sustainability audit and we can chat through it and test it, let me know the QR code there if anyone's scanned that. But give me a shout because we're interested to trial away if anyone wants to be a guinea pig for that. And finally, if anyone wants to read up a little bit more information about this, these will get sent out. But the Green Web Foundation is really leading the way on how we are using digital emissions. So feel free to check that out. But that's us in a nutshell, and hopefully there's some things there just to make you aware of in the world and yeah, think about more in your practice as well. Thank you very much.
Some great food for thought there. If anyone does have any questions for any of our speakers so far, please use the Q&A function. We're not going to have very much time because I'm going to jump straight into Kate, who's going to come off the back of this when Sam was talking about events, and she's going to give us, was it top 5, Kate? Top 5 tips of running your own event and making it a bit more sustainable. So I'm going to let you take that away as we're running a little bit low on time.
Yeah, no worries. Lovely to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. You'll have to excuse my voice. I'm really hoarse this afternoon because I was fiercely campaigning on Thursday for the general election, which I was very thrilled with the result, and I hope many of you in the chat will be as well. And I hope some of you will have seen the great news that's been announced this morning as well in terms of what the new government in charge are doing around lifting that ban on onshore wind, which is really great news for the sustainability community. So I'm the founder of Yorkshire Sustainability Festival. That is the biggest sustainability business event in the north of England. And we launched it last year and we ended up with just over 1,200 people taking part in a week-long series of events. And like Georgia mentioned, we delivered it just a few weeks ago, over a fortnight this time, and we had 1,500 people take part in over 40 events across the region, which was a great success. And many of the people that are on this call were part of it. So thank you so much for your contributions and for being part of the event. So exactly like Georgia said, I'm just going to run through some quick 5 top tips on how to make your events more sustainable. So if you are working within the NHS or working within business in a communications role and your focus is on events at any point, then hopefully some of these will help you. So first and foremost, I want you to think about your suppliers and what you do with bringing in suppliers for the event. One of the things that we highly recommend is that you look to local suppliers. Not only is this really good for your local economy and supporting your local economy, it also reduces your impact, your emissions impact, because the things that you are bringing to the event will not have to travel very far and will have been produced locally. One of the things that we love to do in Leeds, where we run our big festival conference, is we love to work with the brand Image Co. who produce all of our branding in a really sustainable way. So they build us exhibition stands that are made out of cardboard, and I know that Georgia and the team work closely with ImageCo as well, and would highly recommend them. The quality of the products that they produce is really high, but it's also super sustainable as well, and much better than your plastic pop-up banners. Another way that you can reduce that impact from your suppliers is when you think about your catering. So what we always do is try and make our food vegan and vegetarian at the events. If you are going to be supplying meat, try and make it locally grown and locally grass-fed as well. That's really, really important. But vegan and vegetarian is a really great way to reduce the impact, the emissions impact of your event. And we also like to work with suppliers like Surplus to Purpose and other such suppliers that will turn waste food into food to cater for your event as well. And we'd highly recommend you check them out too. One of the things that we always do at our events is look to offset our emissions that we can't control. So things that we look to do is to take the data of the event, of who is attending the event, and ask people to share with us how they've got to the event, whether that's by train, by car, etc. And then look at all the suppliers that we've used and take the emissions that are associated with that. And then we would look to offset those emissions with a local rewilding company. So for example, in Leeds, we'd look to do that with a company called Make It Wild, who are phenomenal, and help to rewild our nature locally. One of the things that we also do on every single one of our panels, on every single one of our roundtables, is that we look to have a nature representative. So we look to have somebody who can come to the discussion and talk about nature and the importance of nature, because one of the things that's happened since the 1980s is that we've lost 80% of our biodiversity, and this is causing us a major issue in terms of our sustainable development, meeting our sustainable development goals, and in order to keep us all alive, frankly. So we look to have a nature representative on every single one of our panels. We also look to have a youth representative on every single one of our panels as well, in order to make sure that our youth voice is represented and diverse as well at the events. If you are running an event that is a paid for event, then we would highly recommend that you have something called a pay it forward scheme in place. So what we do, if you look at our conference, for example, which is about £250 for a ticket to attend, we have a pay it forward scheme in place, which keeps 20% of our tickets back. The NHS can access our pay it forward scheme and access our event completely for free, so that the price isn't a barrier to entry. It makes the event more accessible and better for those who are struggling to get budget sign off as well, which allows us to have more diverse conversation and doesn't create this echo chamber of people who can only afford to be in the room, which we would like to avoid. And finally, my fifth point, and I've absolutely rallied through this as quickly as I can, Georgia, is to rally around a certain day, week, or month to drive forward the message. So just like we're here today on the Sustainability Day of Action, just like people did around Yorkshire Sustainability Festival, we would highly recommend getting behind one day or 1 week or 1 month's worth of events in order to be able to really hone in on the message and create some momentum. It just allows people to actually come together all on one day and raise awareness together. And that's one of the things I love about what Georgia and the team have built with the Sustainability Day of Action. So they're my 5 points with 7 minutes for Q&A. And I think I'm
not sure if we've got very much time for Q&A, and we've not had that many come through on the chat. I think everyone's just come in to sort of introduce themselves and say who they are, and I think that it's great to know that there's so many people within sort of different hospital trusts and people doing things around the green plans and sustainability working groups and all that kind of stuff, which is great. What I did want to share off the back of what Kate was saying is something that we do at Sustainability Partnerships, and that's a sustainability summit. So I'm going to send the link here. There's a sustainability summit, so if everyone can see that. So what we do is we come to your trust, we work with you on your, we look at your sustainability or green plan as a trust and say, okay, these are some of the local businesses who would be interested and interesting to come and do talks just like this, but in a real life setting, so that we can come to you and bring local vendors into the trust, so that they have the chance to pitch in real life in person to you, and you then are able to create like what Jess was talking about, the internal comms piece, a real kind of sense of community around your push on your sustainable actions as a trust. So if anyone is interested in us coming to your trust to run a sustainability summit, please do get in touch with us. And there's a lot of information around how we can put something like that together, a full day, a half day, something to just help you as sustainability and communications managers put something together that's really thought-provoking and well thought through. With the thinking about days of the year thing, we also have a lot more events coming up that I needed to talk to you about. So this month we normally only have one webinar a month, but because we had to move the day of action to today, we now have well, effectively 4 webinars this month, because we've had 3 today, and the next one is not until the 24th of July, and that's on transforming hospital theatres. The next event that we have after that is on the 22nd of August, from Patients to Planet, building a nature positive NHS. So I know that obviously Kate's touched on that. It's something that's really important to both our speakers and a lot of trusts that we've spoken to in the past. And then finally, in September, on the 11th of September, we have Building Back Greener. So this is about strategies for building, transforming and retrofitting the NHS estate. That's during Green Buildings Week. Another thing that we've sort of hooked into activities that are happening sort of around the globe on Green Buildings Week. We've put that one together. And then in October, we have our Reduce, Reuse, Recycle event on the 2nd of October. All of these events can be found in the upcoming events on Sustainability Partnerships website, which again, I will post here, upcoming events. There you go. I think that we do have 5 minutes, and if there's not too many questions, there is a question that's come in. I was going to ask one of my own, and I was going to ask about the entire panel as well, but this one has asked for the entire panel's opinion about the use of cameras for Zoom meetings. So that's very pertinent, given that we're all sat on camera on a Zoom meeting. Are using 90% of the carbon footprint of a virtual meeting, but switching off the cameras, may make communication more difficult. What is out? Does anyone have a stance on this that they want to make clear?
Go on, Sam, because you're the
emissions one, I suppose. I think it's similar with a lot of things that we're seeing in terms of, like what I was talking about with the animation piece. If it's going to disrupt your communications to the point where it's having a negative impact, then obviously keep cameras on. But if you can turn them off, or the majority of people that aren't speaking at any one time turn them off, it's those little reductions, if we all do them, will make a bigger difference. But again, it's kind of preference, whether and weighing up the pros and cons, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's one of the, people have asked, why when you run sustainability partnership events, can't you see everyone who's in the room? And I was like, because sometimes we have over 200 people in the room. I can only have 5 people on the screen at once, because otherwise, A, it would be an endless scroll of people, and B, just the, the bandwidth that would take up to have that many faces it's just too much. It's superfluous to the need, I think. What was your point, Jess?
I was just going to say, obviously, yeah, it depends on the size of who you're sort of communicating to. But I would say if it's more of a established team or like a usual team that you're together, I think it's less important to be on camera, because you've probably built a bit of rapport. And I do think, like, we didn't used to have Zoom before, and you used to be able to tell if someone's engaged and stuff from the sound of their voice and stuff like that. And I think that still exists. I think we're just used to seeing people on the screens and stuff, but I do think you can show a form of engagement when you're just speaking and hearing with people. So I do think if it's a team that knows each other well, and you kind of know that people will be sat there doing stuff, I think it's still helpful. But yeah.
And Gary, did you have a point on that as well?
Yeah, well, just to echo that, really, I think it depends on the purpose of the meeting that you're on. So if it's a town hall type event, then there's no need for anybody there to have cameras on.
Yeah.
If it's a small meeting of 5 or 6 people that are engaging with one another through discussion, then I think it's useful to have cameras on. So it depends on what type of meeting it is to whether cameras should be there or not.
Okay, well, Kate has already had to jump out, and we are just 1 minute to the finish. So unfortunately, we didn't have too much time for Q&A, but I hope that everyone has had a lot of food for thought there. I hope that everyone who from within the NHS has taken a lot of notes down about how you can build out your sustainable communication and storytelling piece, but also how you can question how things are being done, not only within your own teams, but those that supply to you, and you have a little bit more ammo. I know that everyone on this call would be happy to have a quick call with you if you did start thinking about questioning some of your suppliers on how sustainable they are in terms of their digital footprint. I know that everyone here would be happy to give you a little bit of a bit of conversation, a bit of some sound bites as to how you can question suppliers or just question your team or just open conversations and narratives around being a little bit more aware of how communications can be sustainable, but about how you can you can communicate sustainability a little bit more effectively. So that's my last words for the day, because it has been a 3 webinar day. Thank you again so much to everyone who's attended all 3 webinars, and obviously this last one today. Thanks to Jess, Gary, Sam and Kate when she was on as well. This will be recorded, as all of them will be. It will be posted out onto our blog with a write-up and all of the resources, including all of the links, particularly the things that that Sam and Gary were sending, all of the links to the things, including the website sustainability audit. And the video to rewatch on our blog. It'll go on our social and you'll be sent it on an email as well. So thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you for my panelists as well, and have a great Sustainability Day of Action, and see you next time. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.